let's drop in. Question for you. Have you ever done a cleanse or did like a 30-day challenge and then found yourself a week, 2 weeks later at the same place that you were before? Whether it's going back to overeating, binge eating, or I'm not able to work the job that I want to because I can't break past these patterns. Well, welcome to the human experience. So in this video, we'll talk about why we tend to go back to our old ways, our old patterns after a cleanse. And we'll also talk about how to avoid going back to those old habits, those old patterns, actually start to build a whole new way of being, a holistic way of being. So first, let's break it down. While this concept is complex, we can simplify it into two themes: the body and the mind. So the body likes patterns, the body likes rhythm, right? This is why we try to entrain our physical body from a cellular level to cycle with the circadian rhythms of nature, right? The body enjoys repetition. Based on a couple of studies, it takes about 10 generations for the body to get acclimated to a whole new way of eating, of being. This is why understanding our ancestral patterns can be really helpful to knowing what's good for our body, what's helpful for digestion, what's wholesome to a way of being and consuming. So the body really finds these patterns, which helps to conserve energy, right? To create a reservoir of energy if we continue on with cycles, habits, patterns. And if we go through a cleanse, then the body is now starting to get built with new material, right? From a cellular, from a tissue level, from a fat tissue level, everything is starting to change. However, usually cleanses, diets are maybe max 30 days oftentimes, usually 1 week or 5 days. So that's not enough time for our entire physiology to change. So there will be ripple effects from these past habits, these past patterns, the deepest fat tissue layers, which includes from an organ level, and our brain is made of fat, right? So it's very deeply set, right? And a cleanse can't clear it all at once. It shouldn't, or else that actually could be more damaging. We need to move at the right pace. So from a physical standpoint, body is gonna hold repetitive patterns and habits from what happened before a cleanse for however long you've been living, right? So they're gonna start coming out. This is actually quite fascinating because if you look up studies in PubMed, you can find that there's a correlation between memory loss and excessive fat. So in a cleanse, what happens? We start to lose fat, right? Lose fat tissue. And for example, the liver, right? The liver shouldn't have too much fat in it. But once this process of untaxing the liver occurs in certain cleanses, then we start to lose that fat. And what reportedly happens during cleanses, we experience emotional turmoil or emotional challenges, maybe memories come up that haven't been felt or experienced in a very long time. So there's something here around the fat holding or potentially blocking memory. And once it starts to come out, we start to shed the weight or shed the fat in different organs, especially, then these emotions might come up. So give yourself grace, please, because it makes sense that the overwhelm might lead to coming back to these repetitive patterns to try to get that old body back that was able to act as a protective layer. And then the second part of this is our mental capacity, our psychological ripple effects, right? When we exit out of a cleanse or some kind of regimen, there has been very specific rules. There's been very specific pathways that we can say yes, no, great, I'm going to follow the rules, something that we've been conditioned to in society to like for a certain period of time. So we're following these rules, and then the cleanse is over, and now the brain, the body, our emotions, they have the opportunity to get overwhelmed. Why? Why is there an opportunity to get overwhelmed? Because now we're moving out of a potentially rigid format of a cleanse, of a diet, or whatever, and we're moving into more choice, right? More things that you could choose, more things that you could say yes, no to, and probably more environments, locations that you can go to, more people that you can see. Inability to process or digest it will inherently lead to a feeling of overwhelm. So if there is a feeling of overwhelm, then what is the body going to do? Going to revert to ways that are just simple and easy, quick to access. Think of it as like a path in snow. There's a clear path that I've walked down a bunch of times for years, right? Maybe that's I choose to eat a lot of sweets, or I choose to smoke a cigarette, or I choose to call a friend and complain, right? Like all of these different pathways can be chosen over time to dissipate this overwhelm. If my body and mind are overwhelmed, then it can be really easy to choose these pathways because it's less energy, it's less thinking, and right away, mind and body knows, I know the result of going down this pathway. I'm gonna feel a dissipation of that energy. I'm gonna feel a dissipation of that overwhelm after I complain, after I overeat, right? There's a surge of relaxation. So after a cleanse, the moment things get overwhelming, body, the mind is going to reach for something to release that overwhelm. So these are the two simplified reasons why we often revert back to old habits, old patterns, old coping mechanisms. My dog's like, what? Reverting back to old ways? He's overwhelmed, right? Let me just give an example. This Puka dog, Puka bear, he is overwhelmed because he's hearing someone pass by the house. And when someone passes by the house, there's an innate part of him that says, I need to defend, I need to attack. This is my home, this is my property, and I need to defend this space because I don't know who's coming. I can't see him, right? I can just sense them. And it's in his blood, it's in his DNA, it's been in his ancestors, even though he's a tiny dog, to defend home, right? So he's gonna attack, he's gonna bark, he's gonna scream, he's gonna do whatever he needs to because that's the pattern that works for him, right? And he receives that success because now he doesn't hear it anymore. The person has finished walking by, success. For him, there's this surge of serotonin that's like, I did my duty. I followed a pattern habit, which was to fight, and it led to the result that I was looking for. So that's exactly what's happening to the body too, in a moment of overwhelm after a cleanse, okay? So I went through this rigid regimen for a week or however so. Now overwhelm of emotions, overwhelm of choice, right? Something stressful happens at work, and then the habitual pattern that I usually go to, overeating sweets, eating whatever is in front of me, to swallow down the feelings of stress, overwhelm, and not actually move through it in a different way because the body isn't used to going through it in a different way, right? So, part 2, what do we actually do, right? How do we avoid going back to these old ways? So, how do we avoid going back to these old ways and instead move forward and actually become a different person, essentially, right? How do I actually live the life that I'm looking to live to achieve the goals or whatever it is that I'm trying to achieve? Whether that's like a physical goal, whether that's working a specific job, whether it's just feeling confident day to day. How do we do that? There are 2 pieces to this. first has to do with preparation. And I'll quote Confucius, who said, "Success depends on the previous preparation, and without such preparation, there's sure to be failure." So success is relying on all the things that have brought me to this point, which is why I stress over and over that when it comes to cleansing, it's not about that peak moment. It's not about the poop day. It's not about the 3 days where you're taking trifla or whatever it is. It's about everything that led up to that process. Can I be in integrity with a preparation process? That could look like 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 years. We're constantly learning more about ourselves. Every season, every moment, we have that capacity. So if we can intentionally prep, and maybe even in our minds, change this idea of preparation needing to be for a specific time and space, but rather orient towards every moment is an opportunity. So what preparation could look like is somatic inquiry practices, meditation practices, right? Journaling practices. Maybe in the morning, maybe in the evening, these potent times where the brain is turned on to new information and cortisol levels spike. Can we orient towards who do I really want to be, or who am I really? Who am I really? Just that curiosity allows us to be with ourselves. If I create time and space to inquire, prep, right? Be with the sensations and the curiosity of, what am I feeling right now? Am I feeling my heart race? Am I feeling hunger? Am I feeling fullness? What is that experience like in my body? If I can practice that, then in the moment of overwhelm, I have a neural pathway, that path in the snow, that my body, my mind remembers, I can create spaciousness to inquire of what I really actually want and need at this time, instead of habitually going to the cookies, the cigarettes, whatever that is. Nothing wrong with cookies, and tobacco too can be okay, but it's the unconscious choice during a moment of overwhelm when we have this ability, we have this beautiful, brilliant opportunity in those moments of overwhelm to get curious about what it is exactly that my body wants and needs there. For example, in an inquiry I did before going for a whole bunch of chocolate and candy, right? What I had to do after lots of prep and practice was drink some freshly boiled hot water first, calm and regulate my nervous system, create warmth, and ask, okay, what is it that really is pulling me and driving me to all this candy? And what I explored in a drop-in once was actually that I wanted to be held. I hadn't felt like I could share my challenges, my excitements with anyone. And I wanted the comfort of the candy. And that comfort for the candy came literally from feeling a tingle in my chest. A subtle like flutter. It was like feeling coming from my chest area that was like, you need that thing, right? And then once I created some space to sit with it and feel it and realize, from this tingle, flutter in my chest, my heart is reaching for the candy, but the thing behind wanting the candy was actually just being heard, was actually just having some airtime, being heard, and not necessarily to get feedback from anyone, but just to have some airtime. Yeah. So that's this power that we have in self-inquiry and preparation. So that's one aspect. Preparation from a mental standpoint, a mental and somatic standpoint. But then there's also preparation specifically food-wise, right? And tools around the house. I finish the cleanse, I finish this diet or process, and then am I prepared for what's next, right? Do I already know, okay, When I start next, I want to welcome in simple meats. And do I know where those meats are sourced from? So I know already where I'm going to buy my next groceries, right? Or if it's what kind of cooking I want to explore. Have I been only having kanji, right? Like soups.
Okay, important pause so you get this. Because if that's the case, if you have been having just soups, kanjis, or juices, then the best prep to avoid going back to old habits would be to have already known how to make the kinds of foods that you will want to eat after a cleanse. This means having been simplifying the diet before the cleanse, having already had healthy meals through cooking at home. This shouldn't be the first time you cook at home or eat extra greens. It shouldn't be the first time learning how to steam vegetables after a cleanse. Prepping means that you already know how to do that because you have already fed your body these kinds of foods prior to the cleanse. You've already prepped by experiencing the lifestyle that you want to step into after a cleanse. That's real preparation.
All of this is then very tangible prep so that I'm not overwhelmed with, holy shit, I don't know where to get my groceries. I don't know, like, if this is allowed, whatever, allowed. All of these very tangible preparation tools are also so supportive to not revert back. And then the second piece of this is also recognizing that it's okay to not be perfect. Oh, that there's actually no such thing as the perfect integration. Actually, trying to be perfect is just trying to control, but we really can't control anything, so might as well get over it and save us some of the stress that's making us all sick.
Okay, love you.
So instead of thinking it has to be perfect, can I shift my mindset, orient myself away from perfection and instead towards curiosity? If I chose the croissant, if I chose the coffee, can I get so curious about my physical and mental experience with that choice? What happens an hour after I have the croissant and coffee? How do I feel? Amazing. This was my last integration from the cleanse. 26 poops, bowel movements in one day, 9 hours specific, which is a whole other topic. If you want to hear more, then you can sign up for my newsletter because I explained that whole Videchana process. This is a Panchakarma process in Ayurveda. I went to India and pooped 26 times in a safe way because of the proper prep. But that's for another day. What I did 2 weeks after that poop process was I was ready for coffee. I was ready for a croissant after having 2 months of no caffeine, and it was time. And I had the croissant, and I had the coffee, and it was so good. And an hour later, I felt alive. I felt like, well, first of all, I can do literally anything. I can start 5 businesses. I can reach out to all my friends and see how they're doing because of the caffeine. I was like so hyped. And it felt good. And then I chose it again the next day. And it felt good. I chose it again the next day. I had the croissant and a coffee. And it was so good.
Pause. However, I was getting less sleep. So it felt good during the day, but I was noticeably getting less sleep.
And then the third day, I chose it again. And I felt awful. Specifically, I felt anxious. I felt like I couldn't slow my heart down. I felt like I was sharp. Actually, I didn't feel like it. I knew I was sharp to the people I loved. I had no patience for them. I had no patience for their current state of being, their questions, their just wanting to have a conversation. All I wanted to do was work, and I could feel my body tensing up and feeling overwhelmed and overstimulated. So I share this because being so aware and curious about my relationship to the coffee and the croissant on day 3. Because of that, I realized I don't like that. I don't like it. 2 days in a row of coffee and croissant, I'm Gucci. I'm good. Day 3 is a no-go for me. Day 3 does not feel good. So if I wasn't giving myself the time, the curiosity, then I would have missed that. I would have missed it. And I could label myself as a bad person. I could just feel shame. I could also miss the fact that I don't like feeling that. And I didn't like the feeling of closing in my throat and being mean and sharp to people I love. So instead, now I can recognize on day 3, my day 3, I can ask myself, okay, do I want that again? I feel like that would happen again, right? I'm expanding my intuition for telling the future. So even though it's hard and the parts of me, the deeply set, rooted patterns that are seeped into my fat tissues and different parts of my being, they want the croissant and coffee again. I can be the active adult in the room for myself and say, I love you, it's okay, I know you want those things. Because in the past, it's led to being really productive. In the past, it's led to being able to get so many things done. So I hear you, I get that, and maybe I feel that, like if I drop in now, I feel that in my hands, like wanting to do more, be more productive. The reality is that if I have those things again, then it's more like it's having me. I would lose my agency. I get to tune into trust that I can still be productive without the coffee and the croissant. And that productive might look like resting, which would fill up my cup, regulate my nervous system, right? It might not have to look like starting 5 businesses and reaching out to every single person I know. So that's just an example, okay? Bringing it all together again. The 2 reasons why we revert to old ways after a cleanse is usually because the body has deeply rooted patterns and habits that have been present for maybe generations. So we can give ourselves a little bit of grace. And 2, there's a psychological connection to those habits that help to dissipate overwhelm. And after a cleanse, it's inherently overwhelming because we have so many choices, just an overflowing amount of options, ideas, plans. So these are the 2 reasons why we typically go back. Give yourself some grace. And then the 2 ways that we can avoid going back is preparation. I can't say enough preparation. And giving ourselves a little bit of grace when we notice that there's maybe shame or intense emotions, and instead orient towards curiosity. What do I actually feel when I have too much food to where I'm like overly full and I'm in a food coma? How does it actually feel? And do I like that, and do I want it again? So the shame can start to exhale, move out of the shame spiral, and instead move into curiosity and co-creating for next time. Okay, I love you so much. If this was helpful, then go ahead and subscribe so I can make more videos like this. If there's something more that you want to dive into, something deeper like Panchakarma, like specific somatic tools to regulate our nervous system when we're overwhelmed, or if it's talking more about the cleanse itself, put it in the comments so I can make more content around that. And yeah, join the newsletter if you want to hear more about poop, if you want to hear more about other things, if you want to join the community, then come on in. I love you so much. Ciao for now.